Hey guys, it's been a while. Let's talk about 13 Reasons Why Season 4. What the heck did I just watch? Oh, by the way, spoilers, like all the spoilers. Spoilers for all seasons and just everything. Season 4, they knew the show was ending, they knew that this was their final season, and they made it a convoluted mess. Okay, so first of all, there's a slight issue with accountability in the series, which I'm not completely sure what I think about, because we've got two kids, we've got Alex and we've got Tyler. Both of them have committed crimes. In the case of Tyler, I suppose he didn't actually shoot anyone, but still, Alex basically committed second-degree murder. And throughout the series, I was expecting all of that to come out. I mean, there were internal consequences, especially for Alex, whose psyche is probably ruined forever. Serving a few years for second-degree murder with, you know, considering the circumstances of what happened, whatever, I think he may have come out of that actually feeling better than he did at the end of this fourth season, knowing that he has to carry this secret with him for the rest of his life and he did something horrible and everybody just covered it up. So I wasn't sure about that. Again, I like Alex. I was having trouble believing that he would kill somebody in the first place. I didn't want him to suffer or anything like that, but I'm not sure what to think of that as an ending or as a moral. They kind of shoehorned in him realizing he was gay in the fourth season and then going through a couple of boyfriends and then kind of getting a happily ever after and being a prom king with his boyfriend. That just why? I mean, I don't mind him being, I don't care what sexuality he is, but that just seemed to come out of nowhere and just unnecessary. And just why? Because I guess we weren't seeing much of Tony and Caleb and we needed another gay love story, and Courtney wasn't there either, so more gay characters. Okay, but fine, whatever. I just felt like it was a little bit unnecessary, but it was sweet. It was sweet. They were a cute couple. It just came out of nowhere. Then we get to what's happening to Clay in this season. And I mean, it's not just in this season. Clay Jensen has been spiraling out of control for several seasons now. And I never particularly liked it. And in season 4, it just becomes ridiculous. So in the first season, Clay was a very likable character because he was sort of an innocent bystander who got pulled into this thing, and he was a good kid and he wanted to do the right thing and he wanted to be kind to his friends. In the seasons after that, we keep being told that he's still that he still wants to do the right thing and he wants to be the hero. But then in season 3 and season 4, we're told and we're not really shown, because he just behaves like a complete asshole towards most of his friends, especially Justin, for some reason. And then in this season, so the whole first half of the season suddenly switches genres and is trying to turn from a teen drama about serious social issues to a psychological thriller. I don't know why they decided to do that. So Clay is now hallucinating and losing time, and he doesn't know what's happening. He's extremely paranoid. He's seeing a therapist and talking to his therapist. A lot of the narration is him talking to his therapist. But for the problems that he's experiencing, I don't know that just doing therapy is enough, and I'm not sure there was any mention of him taking medication for that. I'm not a psychiatrist, but just it seemed like for this amount of hallucinating, and we learned towards the end that he was dissociating and he was doing all of these things that he didn't know he was doing, a lot of them criminal. For that level of not being okay, I feel like you should be on some sort of pill. Correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but it just seemed like sitting on your therapist's couch and talking would not be enough to address that. I understand the desire to talk about mental illness, but I think the problem with this show is that it tries to address every single issue that comes to mind while using the same cast of 10 to 15 characters. And it very quickly becomes a little bit ridiculous because everything under the sun cannot happen to the same people. Or maybe it can, but it doesn't make for very good character development and storytelling. There were also some characters who were in this season and I wasn't sure why they were there. Mainly Zach and Annie. She's not the best character. They just didn't know what to do with her. She was there as a sort of just a person that Bryce could talk to, and then she had to kind of stick around, but she didn't have enough purpose in the story. And she even says, I mean, breaking the fourth wall a little bit here, but like she even says towards the end of the season when she's being asked who she is, she says, I don't know. And I think that's because the writers don't know. And then Zach, again, another good guy who is suddenly behaving like a dick, and it's not very well set up or justified. I understand that guilt and trauma and losing your, ability to play football, which you love and you thought was your future, and all of that can lead you down a bad path. But they don't really build that up very well. They don't do anything with it. He's basically just doing the exact same thing throughout the entire season, which is just being reckless, doing stupid shit, and telling everybody that he doesn't care. He's a known character. Like, why is he there? What's the point? He shows up every once in a while, does something stupid, everybody shouts at him for being stupid, and that's it. And at the end of it, he magically decides not to do that anymore and everything's fine. One of the big problems, I think, is that the writers of the show aren't sure what point they're trying to make in this season. I think they just heard that it was going to be last season, they wouldn't get any more chances to use whatever ideas they had, so they just shoehorned all of the ideas in there. And then at the very last minute, we are now talking about AIDS. I mean, this is a serious issue, but it comes completely out of nowhere. It isn't built up, it isn't set up, you're not really saying anything significant. Okay, so let me backtrack here. So basically what happens is the season begins with a funeral because we're not gonna take the show seriously if somebody isn't dead. Because if we were just talking about kids going through difficult times or experiencing trauma, that's not enough. We need to have a body. So okay, we're starting with a funeral, but we don't know whose funeral it is, and we're trying to maintain this mystery throughout the whole season of who the heck is dead, and the answer to that question is stupid. So it ends up being Justin. Okay, but how? Well, in the second to last episode, we learned that, oh surprise, he actually got HIV while he was living on the streets and working as a prostitute, and it's only now showing up but he's now actually got a disease that's very advanced and we can't save him and he's gonna die, and he spends half of the last episode dying a very long death. Listen, I love Justin. Justin was definitely one of my favorite characters, so I should have been feeling really upset when you were showing me that character slowly dying. But the problem is, when it doesn't feel real, when it feels like bad writing and shoehorning in issues that we've never talked about before in this show, and this is the 11th hour and you're suddenly coming up with this, I feel like I am being emotionally manipulated, and that immediately leads me to not actually care. I was sitting there being bored. A lot of people complained about this one. A lot of people complained that Justin was arguably the character with the most potential for redemption and the best character arc, which I agree. He seemed to be trying the hardest. He wasn't just soaking in corners and being angry all the time. And I don't like the trope of killing the only positive person in a group of people. And then at his funeral we get all of these speeches about how we should be protecting kids and what world we're, you know, creating for them and all of that. But the problem is, in this context, this doesn't fully make sense. I mean, the people who could have done something to help him did something to help him. I guess your point is, oh, but that was too late, but this is not helpful. Like, this is not helpful. He is not a great poster child for this, because somebody noticed that he was in trouble and they did everything in their power to help. And I'm mostly talking about Clay's parents, because, as I said before, Clay tried to help him initially and then for some reason just switched to being a horrible brother, but whatever. Then again, I don't really like the portrayal of the Jensens either, because they seem completely useless and half the time they act like robots, and they're just these stereotypical parents where I don't even know, like, everything is going up in flames around them and they still behave like the issue is something like, oh, their kids slightly misbehaved in school, or, but apart from the fact that they are lying to them and tracking their phones, it's just, I don't know, they were very strange. They were very stepfault parents-y. Anyway, the way that Clay behaved towards Justin and the way that Jessica behaved towards Justin kind of brings me to my biggest issue with this season, which is, it seems that there are no lessons learned. None. We've spent years now talking about these issues, about how we have to pay attention to each other and each other's experiences, and how we have to try our best to be kind, and nobody's doing that. Everyone's being a dick. Nobody trusts anyone. Everyone's being a horrible friend. I don't even know what to say. These kids just don't learn. You're trying to tell me that Jessica, who was feeling guilty about not noticing that Hannah was in trouble and not being a good enough friend, and she herself has gone through so much trauma, you're telling me that she would be incapable of being understanding when her boyfriend comes out of rehab and says, listen, I'm not in a place where I can have a relationship. Let's not have a relationship now. I need to sort things out first. You are telling me that this young woman, who you're trying to present as a strong role model, and sure, she has her shortcomings and sure, she has her issues, but by this point, she should have learned, you know, some lessons about relationships and how to take care of people and how to help people. You're telling me that she would not be understanding and like a regular person just say, honey, I understand, I'm here for you, I'm gonna do my best to help, because me wanting a boyfriend is not as important as your recovery? That's what you're saying about this girl? I mean, come on. And then Tyler as well. So you spent an entire season learning that you should not be a dick to this kid, and you should try to treat him well, and you are all saying that you're his friends now. But then you immediately start suspecting him of doing something wrong, and then you don't really talk to him about it, and you behave dickishly to him as well. At the end, after Justin dies, it all gets magically, I guess, resolved. Not really resolved, like nothing's resolved, but they're graduating, and that's the end of high school, and because it's the end of high school, I guess it gets better after that. It doesn't. You're still carrying the same issues, and a lot of them you haven't resolved, and apparently you haven't learned. One of the things they're trying to kind of show is that adults are, you know, they're not the enemy, they're trying to help, and there are a few moments like that where Clay sort of realizes that a lot of the adults around him that he was sort of at odds with are actually not bad people, and they were trying to help. But the problem is that the show goes so back and forth on that, and the grown-ups are awful, and then they're not, and then they are, and then they're not, and that could be realistic if it's done well, but it's not. There's an attempt to write complex characters, but they don't come off as complex characters. They come off as tools to talk about issues, but not as real people. And then we also have, like, we have more endings to this show than Lord of the Rings. There are so many endings. Justin dies, then there's the funeral, and we make a speech at the funeral. Then they're graduating, and we're making speeches at the graduation. Then there's the after graduation kind of get together where we see what's happening with everyone. By the way, Tyler is now seemingly dating the sister of the person who raped him. And she still doesn't even know for sure that her brother did not murder his best friend, and Tyler knows who did, and this is such a mess. And this relationship is gonna be so awkward in the future. I don't even... Okay, but okay, we see everybody has kind of, you know, found their place, and they're going off to college, and everyone's happy, and everything's resolved last minute. Clay talks to like a bajillion ghosts a bajillion times. Then there's another ending with Clay and Tony driving off in a car, and that, I guess, is the final ending that we get. Too many endings. Too many endings. Oh, I skipped the one where they bury Hannah's tapes, and Bryce shows up as a ghost and has a really bizarre conversation with Jessica. All in all, I still think that this series is worth watching, but watch it with a pinch of salt, or maybe even a cup of salt, with lots of salt and lots of seasoning and questioning and all of that. Be entertained, but be critical. Some things in it aren't great. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you at some point with the next video.